Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us on the Activate and Illuminate podcast with Mel. I'm your host, Mel. Together, we're going to be diving into some stories of ordinary people doing a little bit of extraordinary things. People who've maybe pushed their bodies, their mindsets, or maybe society's paradigms. So you're going to find yourself maybe wanting to laugh, cry, or even be inspired. We would invite you to share, like, and subscribe, to sign up for our newsletter as well on activateandilluminate.com. Now, just keep in mind that this information that you are going to hear is informational and educational for entertainment purposes only. This does not constitute professional advice of any kind. The views expressed are those of myself and guests only. Listeners are encouraged to seek professional and legal advice regarding their own situations. So, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time, and thanks again for being here. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. So I have the honor today of chatting with a man, a husband, a father who has gone through something unimaginable that is honestly beyond comprehension to most of us. And his story, I think, will shed light on perhaps part of our society and things happening that we maybe don't know about, don't want to know about. But I wanted, as soon as I heard Iain Bryson's story, I reached out to him. And honestly, it is an absolute honor that he's here to share his heartbreaking family tragedy. And Iain, if you could just, first of all, welcome
Thank you,
to
Mel.
the Activate and
It's great
Illuminate
to be here.
podcast. Yeah, this podcast is about activating or illuminating things that, maybe just like this story that we may not know about, but I think that deserve to come to consciousness. So tell us a little bit, your 100-foot overview of what has transpired in your life, and then we'll get into the specifics of it.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. It's an honor to be here, and I'm so glad you reached out to me. So I graduated from the University of Connecticut in 2003 with a master's in political science, and basically I was just a 20-something-year-old guy who had no idea what was going on in the world or what my role was and what I was going to do next. I was just kind of going through the motions, and I knew that I wanted an education, and I ended up with master's in political science because that's what interested me. And I thought I was going to go to law school. And then I was living in Connecticut, and a friend called me and said there's some Polish people that moved in next to him and that I should come check them out. So I drove over there and got out of the car. And as soon as I saw this group of Polish people, the woman who would become my first wife, I laid eyes on her and knew she was going to be my wife. It was like I thought it was love at first sight at the time. And I guess it kind of was to a point, but there was something else too. And I'm not really sure if it was her, kind of mesmerizing me or a fate or, destiny. Like, I don't regret it. And it was supposed to happen, but she was over with a Polish boyfriend. She immediately got rid of him and moved in with me and, called her mother and said, I met my soulmate. She took a plastic ring off her finger and gave it to me and said, ask me to marry you. And I did. This was within 2 weeks of knowing her. And there were signs that something was going on with her right off the bat. I have a journal from the first year that I met her, the first month that I met her, where I'm writing things like incest question mark, borderline personality disorder question mark. She had no memory of her childhood. She would say things like, the nicest thing my dad ever did is bring me one cup of tea. And, and we would have arguments about this, like that's impossible. That's like saying that the best thing that's ever happened to me was I got to open a bottle of water. It's like ludicrous to the point where it didn't make any sense, but we kept going. And, she would go from I love you to I hate you and just with no explanation, but I was committed. And I just kept trying to figure out what was going on with her. And we went back to Poland to get, because her visa ran out. So we had to get a fiance visa to come back to the US together. And I stayed with her family in Poland for a while, and more flags started coming up. Her grandfather asked me how she is in bed. Her father would make inappropriate comments, and just it was a very strange experience living with her family in Poland. But I chalked all that up to it being Polish, to cultural differences. And this is my wife now, or going to be, and we're going to live in the United States. So this is just interesting and doesn't really matter. So then we moved back to the United States, and our daughter was born in 2007. And pretty much immediately after that, she started talking to me about moving to Europe. She wanted she pitched the Netherlands to me to be closer to her family. Um, and that because of the Netherlands, everyone speaks English. And at the time, the euro was worth double the dollar. And my degree in political science meant I could probably get a job at like a criminal court in The Hague, which so she kind of sold this to me as, well, let's get closer to my family. And I jumped on it, and we did. And then her father started visiting our apartment in the Netherlands pretty often, and there were more cycles of her going from "I love you" to "I hate you." And then with our daughter in the mix, that was something that I really honed in on. Though I was blind at the same time. My daughter was my world, but she would go to Poland or see her grandfather and then be traumatized. And I really relied on my wife's feedback. You know, she was the woman. I trusted her completely. When my daughter would have signs of child abuse, I would confront it and then just kind of let it go because my wife wasn't concerned or had an explanation. And it was just like a blind trust. So this went on for from 2008 to 2010. We decided to move back to the United States. We applied for my wife's new visa. At the time, Polish people, even though we were married, she couldn't just go back to the US. So we applied for the visa, and I decided I would send them to Poland while I went to the US and looked for a place for us to live and for work. And we were apart for 3 months. And during those 3 months, every communication was, "I love you. Can't wait till we're back together." And it was just like unbelievable. I thought I was the luckiest man in the world and couldn't wait to get back to my girls. I was putting things in place in the US and figured that she was holding it down in Poland. So we met back at our apartment in The Hague after that 3 months apart. And immediately I knew something was wrong. She said, "I hate you. I've always hated you. I'm taking our daughter back to Poland. This has been the plan all along. My family's a cult." And just from there, for the next 3 weeks, she just kept repeating things like that and telling me that her dad's plan was to do this. And he created a red herring and no one was going to believe me. And I just, looked at my wife and just said, like, "This is crazy. I don't know what you're talking about, but I've seen this we've been here before and we need help." So I begged her for 3 weeks to get help. I was studying her, looking up, trying to figure out what the heck's going on with her. And I thought, I got to places like sociopath and narcissism and all those things I was looking at, which she is those things, but it's deeper than that. And I went to a psychologist, tried to get him to help. I went to the police, tried to get them to help. They wouldn't help. And I was writing to people like my mother and my best friend and saying I'm terrified. And everyone was just, too far away or didn't understand what was going on. And so for 3 weeks that I tried that, and then it eventually my wife convinced me she was going to take our daughter to the library, and I gave our daughter a big hug and watched them walk down the stairs, and I never saw my daughter again. After that big hug, I called my friend who I've known since age 15 and just, "I don't know what to do. It's happening again. We need help." And as I'm kind of unloading on him, the wall breaks down and I'm like, "They're gone." And I get off the phone with him, run to the police. The police won't help me or even take a report. Come back. The US Embassy says it's out of our jurisdiction. You need to re-abduct your daughter and get her to the embassy. And it went like that for 3 months, me every day trying to get help, and nobody either being able to or willing to help. And after 3 months, I decided like I had to do something. No one's listening to me. My little girl's, was taken from me, and she's in this horrible situation. Somebody needs to listen to me. So I went to Poland and waited for my father-in-law to come out to throw his beer cans away, chased him down the street, beat him up. And I wasn't angry. This wasn't retribution. This was, I need a platform. Now they're going to listen to me. And it was desperate. Like I was desperate, and I was alone, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't have money, and I didn't speak Polish, and I didn't have my family on my side. So I ended up getting arrested and thinking, now it won't be long before I see my daughter, because they're going to have to do a child abuse investigation. And that never happened. I was held on an attempted murder charge for 19 months pretrial. And then they stacked a case where I'm saying my sole purpose for being here is a child abuse investigation. And they're saying, well, we don't care about why you're here. We care about what you did. And so the prosecutor said, well, there is no child abuse because I asked your wife. And so I ruled that out. And therefore, you're crazy because you're saying there's child abuse. So they had me evaluated by a court psychiatrist. And he said, well, the prosecutor says no abuse. You say abuse. Therefore, that's a delusion. So I went from 19 months pretrial prison through Poland's forensic psychiatric institution system, 3 tiers, 50 months total locked up in Poland. And then they let me out in 2015, and I started to write my book. I met my current wife in 2018, and she just, jumped right on board. And together we are still fighting for my daughter, and we trying to advocate and help survivors of this type of abuse as much as we can, and know that our purpose is in this arena, and educate people, because I was just a normal guy who married into this type of family, and I feel like that can be prevented. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's what the story is, Mel. And basically, when they let me out of Polish prison in 2015, I had to put my daughter on the back burner while I was there, because they were not hearing it. They weren't going to do anything for me. They were using it against me. And so I just, I needed to get out, get out, get out, get out. And I did in 2015. And I just got back to figuring out what I could do for my daughter. And eventually I published my book and met my second wife, my current wife, and told her my story. And she just jumped right on board. And we want to advocate for and fight for survivors, and of course still my daughter, but we're just trying to do whatever we can to expose and to educate and to help people who are dealing with similar situations, because unfortunately it's not rare.
Do you think that your wife was kind of ritualistically abused as well?
Yes, I 100% do. And I think, like, my initial take on her when we first met, that I thought she had borderline personality disorder, and just incest was involved, and no memory of her childhood, and all of that, like, kept going until I saw more signs, where she told me my family's a cult. She said, I'm taking our daughter back to Poland because of mind control. She said she has something like Stockholm syndrome. And I had never heard of dissociative identity disorder or ritual abuse. So I there were times where I had to look for marks on my wife's body to make sure I was dealing with the same person, because that's how different she would be. She would be a totally different person, and wouldn't be able to see that it was ever the other way, right? Like, once she hated me, and I said, well, but you loved me yesterday. No, I didn't. It was always this. And just from her saying my family's a cult, and her, going through that whole step process for 3 weeks of telling me her family's a cult and this was going to happen to me, and telling me that I need to do it for my daughter, is what she yelled at me. And then it happened. And the story that her dad planted worked. People looked at me and never investigated what I alleged, never evaluated my 4-year-old daughter. I believe it's 100% a ritual abuse case. Yes,
What is her family of influence?
they are. They are. So I didn't know until after my daughter's abduction. It was strange. They lived in the center of town. Her mother is a vice principal at a school, and her father was always this guy who I couldn't really pin down. Like I knew that he worked for the city, but he never was really doing anything. And we would go like hang out around town, and he had a key to like get into this school and that school to like play basketball or something on the weekends. And he'd bring me into these clubs and we'd play pool. I never knew how much influence he had, and until he took my daughter, and then I started to look at him, and I saw that he was the manager of the city basketball team. That he's works for the center of culture in the city, and is friends with the president of the city. And his best friend, who is my first wife's godfather, is a judge in the court that I was tried in. So like I didn't have a chance. I absolutely didn't have a chance because of how tied in this little group is. Just the fact that a judge in the court I was tried in is his best friend. Like I that was the first thing I did in court, was say there's a conflict of interest. These two people know each other. Can I have another jurisdiction? And they just said no. They didn't allow me to call witnesses on my behalf. They didn't allow me to cross-examine the testimonies of the other side. It was really quite ridiculous in court.
So, since this happened to you, this has been quite some time now, 2010. You've delved into this. And how how prevalent is this in our society and countries?
It's too prevalent. It's not like, it's hard to put a number on it, but I would say, of course, not everyone's doing it,
Yeah.
but it's happening everywhere.
Now tell when you
So
say doing it, tell me what you mean by doing it.
I think practicing evil, practicing an evil that the normal population, it cannot even comprehend. And it just comes down to, if you decide to practice evil, and this is generationally, and it goes back to ancient times, and it's always been around. But the epitome of that is putting your kids through the fire, is sacrifice, is the you get real spiritual power from doing real wicked things. And that's what these people have done and dedicated themselves to, and put their bloodlines in bondage to, when it comes down to. But what I would say is the fact that we don't know about it, law enforcement doesn't know about it, or isn't.
Do they?
They know about it, and some of them are involved, but they're not. It's not. There's no war against child abuse, right, or ritual abuse. The resources aren't allocated for it. Typical therapists don't know about it, right? They're not. They're treating symptoms, and most of it gets like a bipolar disorder diagnosis or something like that. But a lot of it is trauma, and so because like our radar isn't attuned to it, it's happening in every town, every city in the world. Like, I mean, every is a strong word, but basically that.
So, you have had something unimaginable happen as far as, creating a life together with somebody, marrying somebody, and then not being able to see your daughter for the last 15 years. Tell me what you would describe your personal mission as now.
So I don't think it's changed. It's maybe become more clear, and I can elaborate on it more. But you know, and it's my daughter, but it's also her mother. And I made a commitment to her mother. I was married to her. I believe in marriage. I believe in that commitment. I believe it goes beyond like what I want and what makes me feel good and what she's doing for me. and we had a child together. And that little girl, to me, as a man, as a father, is the most precious thing in this world. And so that was taken from me December 27th, 2010. And not a day has gone by where I have stopped, desiring that to change, desiring her to be okay, desiring to be her daddy, and I had to watch her entire childhood go away. But it's not about me. It's about her. And so I won't stop as long as I have breath in my lungs, fighting for her, just for her freedom, for the truth to come out, for her children not to have to be a part of that. And I, and when I was locked up, when this first happened, it was just Adele, 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 as it should have been. And after I got out of prison, and I was writing and researching, and it just, like, it hit me that this is a bigger problem, that my daughter being in it is it's what lights the fire under me to do what I do. But I'm not only fighting for my daughter at this point. I it's not okay for any of our children to be subjected to this. And from what I see and the people that I know, it's many children.
I mean, I know we've seen some lately, a lot more in the news and a lot more prevalent. But what misconceptions do you think people have about the word cult or this influence?
I I think I think that people think that they're sharp enough or discerning enough to be able to see this sort of thing. And I think, and I was that way too. I didn't think there was anything that could fool me. I thought most religious groups were cults of some sort, and that it was obvious. And how do people get involved with this? But this is just like a closed group of people who are practicing, witchcraft, and the darkest things that society is starting to see now, but still not wrapping their head around. And witchcraft is real. There's power in evil that works, and people don't understand that. They think that's fantasy, that's, superstition. It's not, and it's coming out now with, people in Hollywood are saying they made these deals, and you get this and you give that and get this, and that's what it comes down to. Is people are trading the what I think is the most valuable thing, our children, for what they think is the most valuable thing, which is power and influence in this world.
What do you think were some of the warning signs?
So the warning signs initially were just who my first wife was and how she presented to me. And I knew there was trauma in her background. She had absolutely no stories about her childhood other than the one where her dad brought her a cup of tea, and that was the nicest thing he ever did. And that, like, I I knew that was a warning sign, but at the same time, I didn't think that childhood abuse would be following her into our marriage. I thought, whatever she's been through, whatever she's experienced, we'll deal with that. And I'm okay with all of it. And it's made her who she is. And we'll deal with it. But I didn't understand that it could be influencing to the level it was now. So that was the initial warning sign, just her. And I immediately saw the "I love you, I hate you" cycle.
Yeah.
And then when we went to Poland, the things that her grandfather and father said to me, the rampant alcoholism, the fact that her mother was the most miserable person I'd ever met, and really everyone over there, especially the women, were odd, and in a, like, a quiet, just miserable way. Like, more warning signs. But the biggest warning signs came with my daughter. And and because I trusted my wife so completely, I didn't see them at the time. And that's hard for some people to understand, but my daughter came back from Poland with bruises, talking about her grandfather's genitals, screaming about "not my pee-pee, not my pee-pee," and learning regression, wetting her bed again, all kinds of signs of child abuse. But like, what about the "not my pee-pee" screaming? My wife would say it's a soap irritation, and I'd say, well, how do you know? Shouldn't we go to the doctor? And she'd say, no, it's fine, but I know it's a soap irritation. And I'd say, okay, because I couldn't jump to my wife is involved in the abuse of my daughter. That was there was a wall there that was off limits. It's not possible. So therefore, what she's telling me has to be true. And until like the last time, and this past the last 3 weeks we were together, I told her, no, I know it's not a soap irritation because it happens every time you go to Poland. And this time you were there for 3 months. Like, did you keep using the same soap? It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, my daughter was exhibiting all kinds of signs that she had been abused, and then just the "I love you, I hate you" flips in my wife were the biggest red flags. They were huge, glaring red flags. It's just that I had aligned myself with this woman and put my trust in her to on a level that I would warn people against. Like, I think we can trust our spouses and our partners and our friends, but wisely. And that's what I missed, is I just blindly trusted her with something nobody should ever trust anybody with completely. Yeah, that there were tons of flags, and then she told me what was going to happen, and I was seeking help, but not as desperate as I should have been if I knew what was actually going to happen.
This episode brought to you by protandemcanada.lifevantage.com. What if you could turn on your body to work like it was supposed to? What if you could have it remember how to handle toxins, stress, and the environment like it used to when you were young? What if it worked for your pets too? What if this is not about supplementing something that is missing, but activating something that has gone dormant? About actually turning on your body to make these things again. Learn how to activate your body now. Check us out, protandemcanada.lifevantage.com.
So, do you think that these these organizations and these, it's hard to say cult, and it's you hear people in a cult and it's a specific cult, right? It's a this cult or a that cult, and we believe this and we believe that, but this is a little bit more systemic. This is a little bit more, sounds like a little bit more long term and a little bit more condoned, and it has a lot more implications than just a crazy offshoot cult. Tell me what systems that you feel like had to be compromised in order to allow this to keep going on the way that it's going on.
The systems like law enforcement, that type of system, or
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, I think that the law enforcement system, international law, child protection laws are set up in a way that is not child centric, that are set up in a way where it kind of gives a would-be child abductor a blueprint of how to do a successful child abduction. Uh, and so, like, because every child, when a child's taken from a parent, there's always a he said, she said, right? Like, it's high emotion. Somebody might be lying, both people might be lying, but the child's at the center of that. And like, when I went to the police, when I went to everywhere that I went to, my my argument was just, I don't care what you think about me. Like, you can lock me up and throw away the key. Just stop my daughter from leaving the Netherlands and evaluate her, please. And they wouldn't do it. So, like, I think that we need to change our laws so that the child is the most important thing in the picture. And who cares what I say? Who cares what her mother says or anyone else says? Let's look at the child. And I think that was the biggest ball that dropped, was just the Netherlands would not stop this little girl from leaving their country and evaluate her. The US, even though my daughter was born in Connecticut, said that it's out of their jurisdiction, and because her mother's Polish, when she's in Poland, she's considered to be a Polish citizen, not an American citizen by the US government. And so that absolutely blew my mind. Like, I thought the US government would fight for a little child, who was born in Connecticut. But it came down to more respecting Poland's laws and their relationship with Poland, and this is the way it works. So we can't do anything. We have to trust what Poland's doing with the situation. And so I had nowhere to go. Like the U.S. Secretary of State, who says that they they're against parental child abductions and they're gonna help you get your child back. They have a whole website for it. When it came down to it, they told me that I would have to wait up to 2 years to get the case into court. And I was just, I can't wait 2 years. I couldn't wait 2 years as a dad to this little girl. I needed someone to look now. Every day was excruciating because I realized where the bruises and the vaginal pain were coming from, and she was back with those people.
Hmm.
I think so that those are the main ones initially, and then once I was arrested and speaking to Polish authorities, and I was telling them what I needed them to investigate, then they're telling me that ritual abuse and dissociative identity disorder are only in American Hollywood. They don't really exist. These are court expert psychiatrists telling me that, like, they've never heard of a woman who's being abused who wouldn't or couldn't get help on her own. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, date rape victims have trouble getting help on their own sometimes. I'm talking about someone who was abused by her father from birth. Like, they so there was a disconnect between, like, the reality of what trauma actually is and what it does and can do. They just denied that possibility to me throughout my entire proceedings.
Do you have any proof that your daughter's safe and alive? Like, do you have pictures? Do you have?
I have a lot of pictures, yeah. So
Okay.
I followed her, because of the internet. I was able to find her pretty much along the way in schools, school websites, and then because her grandfather is big in the city, like, there's all kinds of pictures with him. There's pictures of my daughter with the president of the city. I probably have 50 or 100 pictures of my daughter from when she was taken to present, and so I have no reason to believe she's not okay. I've seen a picture of her when she's between 17 and 19 years old.
Do you think you were like? Do you think your wife came over to look for this situation?
I That's something, like, I don't know. I don't, like, of course I've gone down different rabbit holes and tried to, make a list of what it could be, every possibility that it could be. And so I think she chose me. I don't know if it was something she saw on the spot or something that she had planned, or I don't know. I know that truth is stranger than fiction, and that the way that my family has responded to this situation is strange. And I found out after the fact, and actually after I got out of prison, that both sides of my family come from Freemasonry, which is involved in stuff like this. So I don't really know. But I do believe that she chose me, and me thinking it was love at first sight and that I had any say in the matter was not true. She had me wrapped around her finger from the get-go.
So tell me what you said something there. Tell me about your family and their response and where you are now with that.
Yeah, so, like, when we moved to the Netherlands in 2008, my daughter was between 0 and 1, and we left my family, and just we were living alone in the Netherlands, the 3 of us. And so I didn't have a lot of contact with my parents or my brother and sister. Um, and I liked that because I liked that I was like kind of away figuring out who I was going to be, what my family was going to be without my mom knocking on my door, for example, or having a say in the matter. But so then when issues started happening with my first wife, especially in the last 3 weeks we were together, I was reaching out to my mom and saying, "Mom, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to get her to agree to get help with me and things like that." And my dad, I didn't really talk to him about it. He was going through his own divorce to his second marriage at the time, and just I was in another country dealing with life on my own. So when the abduction happened, then I immediately contacted my parents, and my mother initially was, on my side. She got me in touch with the US Embassy. She was trying to help. And then it got weird, and I couldn't tell what was going on because they were lying to me. I knew they were lying to me. My dad came over to the Netherlands, and the first thing he did was invite a psychiatric intervention team into my apartment. And so five of these people came into my apartment because my dad let them in. And I'm just sitting at my desk, writing emails, trying to get help for my daughter. And I got them to leave, but I was ripped at my dad, like, and I almost kicked him out because like you're working against me. Like, what is going on here? And I tried to like get him back on my side because I needed him. I needed my parents, and I couldn't understand like what was going on, other than I knew they were talking to my first wife, and I knew what she had told me about, the red herring, and no one's going to believe me. And I know her power, right? Like she had me fooled. So like for her to fool my parents is not a tall tale. Like it's not a stretch. And also at this point after the abduction, like I am freaking out. Like I'm not sleeping right. I'm not eating right. I'm talking about ritual abuse and mind control and cults. And so like my daughter is like my daughter was taken, which is the same as if you took my heart out of my chest. And so I am flipping out, freaking out, just begging people to get help and them basting them when they don't listen, when they don't understand. And so I think that my mom made a decision that my first wife has to be right. And I have communication between them from this period that I didn't get until I saw the court record. But so then my dad flew me back to Connecticut and told me we were going to get an attorney. My mom and my aunt picked me up in Boston and drove me straight to a hospital and tricked me into being checked in there for 2 weeks. And it was a total, just another deception. And I go in there and I talk to the psychiatrist, and he's ready to let me out the next day. And my mom and my aunt and my dad and my cousin call and say they're scared, so they keep me for 2 weeks. It's just absolutely ridiculous to me. Like all I'm trying to do is get my 4-year-old daughter evaluated at this point. And so after 2 weeks, they let me out. I go to my mom's house and she gives me my car keys and a $20 bill and says I have to go. And then from there, like I've never had communication with my mom about this and on a healthy level. When I So then I went and got locked up basically because no one, if my parents were on my side, I think this would have went differently. The problem was that I was standing all alone and no one else was echoing what I was saying or saying, "Hey, I believe Iain. Let's get his daughter evaluated."
So, what I'm hearing in this is that her family had a huge amount of pull with your family.
Huge amount.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, and still does. So even now, after I published my book, my mom took me out of her living trust and evicted me off the property she was going to give me. She's told my current wife that she's had communication with my daughter and my wife, my first wife, for the entire time, and that she doesn't believe me, and it's really it's one of the most difficult things I've had to deal with in my life. Like you want and think your mother should know who you are, right? And she just doesn't. And so I see it kind of like she's under a spell of sorts, coupled with she made a decision which was a very, very crucial decision and then doubled down on that decision over and over and over again. So for her to reevaluate potentially risks collapsing a lot of her world. So it's easier just to keep, and she's a tight-lipped Yankee who just, I'm just going to go this way. I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like but if my parents had, when my daughter was abducted, thrown money at it and said, we're going to help you, we believe you, blah blah blah, would have gone a different way. But part of me, I don't think it was supposed to go that way. It wasn't supposed to be easy. It was supposed to break me. It was supposed to make me look elsewhere for my help and see the bigger picture, right? And so I'm not condemning my parents. I'm not. I forgive them. I do wish that we could have a better relationship now and that they knew who I was. But like, everything happens for a reason, and I'm blessed through all of this, and I do believe that good does win in the end.
What do you think some of those bigger reasons are?
Well, I just think, like, if they fought for me and with me, and we were able to get my daughter evaluated and get fight for my parental rights and custody rights, then I wouldn't have been ripped apart to the point where I had to see what I've had to see. Like, like I have had to. I understand ritual abuse and mind control and the people that do it. I understand why they do it. I understand all of that, and I understand that it's happening, and it doesn't blow my mind. Like, nothing really blows my mind anymore because I've seen what's under the carpet, and so, like, that, it's a blessing to get to see that. It's a blessing because I don't wonder what I'm doing here. I don't wonder what I'm supposed to do next. I don't what my purpose is, who I'm fighting for. Like, I know all of those things, and yes, it's uncomfortable, and it's the last thing that I ever wanted. But at the same time, clarity is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and through the pain of your situation, you're helping probably a lot more.
I hope so, because it like the you asked me. I think we were off camera, but you asked me what I love you like one means, and that's really what it comes down to, is that we are all part of the same thing. We're all, if I don't care for your child, then I'm also not caring for my own child, right? Like, because one, they go hand in hand, and so it's either all of the children are important or none of them are, because when it comes down to it, nobody cares about my daughter, right? And that's not right. So the right thing is for me to care about your daughter and your daughter and your daughter, because that's what I would want reciprocated. Um, and it's just kind of like, what is best for my daughter? What is the best road for me to take? The best thing for me to do as a man and a father for my daughter. And that's really what it comes down to, is it's not okay that this is happening to any of these children. And I wouldn't be in the fight except that it's happening to mine, right? But through that process, now I also care about yours and hers and theirs.
Yeah. Hmm. Just as you're saying that, that lends so much more depth to every person's mission, regardless of whatever it is. It's like, if that's your mission for everyone. It completely changes a perspective of a personal kind of directive, doesn't it?
I think it does. And like, my view has been extreme and harder than I wish for people. Like, I don't want people to have their heart ripped from their chest to be able to see what's going on in their lives and what's important and what's not. But like, I've worked in alcohol and drug recovery fields and things like that. And I try to relay what I've learned to these people, because to me it's crystal clear. It's black and white. Like, it's not difficult once you see what's real and what's important, to just be like, all right, this is why I'm doing it and this is what I'm going to do, period. And I do think it pertains to everybody. And I think it's really what's missing in people's lives, is that that clarity about what's happening in our world, and that keeps us kind of weak and numb and unsure. And it's like, when you see it, then you're just like, all right, I know what direction to go now.
And my personal beliefs is that we have been systematically detached from so many things to create that numbness, to create that kind of, walking through life with blinders on.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like in my book I write about like I don't know if you had these commercials in Canada, but when I was a kid, there were commercials of the starving kids in Africa,
Yeah, yeah.
and send money to this thing. And just like, even as a kid, I can remember just being ambivalent, just, you know, are those people even real? And you like learn not to care, because to care would mean you'd have to do something different. It would change the fact, it would change your life. Right. And so, yes, it is systematic. And we believe that these things are far away from us, that they're not us, that there's nothing we can do about it. And it's not true. And for me, it took it coming into my house to be like, okay, now I have to do something about this. And when you have to do something about it, that's when you see that you can.
So tell me about some good things in Ian's life right now.
Well, my wife Emily is wonderful, and I am so blessed that God put her in my life. Like I was I had my I didn't just lose my daughter, I lost my wife too. And because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know we were in conflict until she said, My dad created a red herring and we're going to take your daughter." And I loved her and still love her, but like a sister now. But so when I got out of prison, I had my wedding ring on from her, and I was certain I was never going to be married again, like as certain as I am of anything, or was of anything. And then Emily, my wife, my current wife, walked into my life, and it was just like, oh, I didn't know this creature exists, and so, like, I feel incredibly blessed in all of this. I feel blessed that I married into the family I married into, that I have the daughter I have, who is like, I know her, like, I don't didn't get to grow up with her, but I know who she is. I know her soul, and she's the most amazing thing in the world. And I believe that things happen for a reason, and that evil doesn't win in the end. So I feel blessed to have been a part of this story, and to be fighting for the people I'm fighting for, and to know the outcome ultimately. And the outcome doesn't have to do with like what I want, or what makes me feel good. It's deeper than that. It's the freedom of these people who have been enslaved their whole lives. And so, like, I've seen things fall into place, like my whole life was blown up, and then I've put it back together in truth, in more and more truth, as every time I can replace a lie with the truth, and I do, and I keep doing that. And my wife is an amazing partner who helped edit my book and stands by me 100%, and loves my daughter and my first wife, and wants them to see them free. We got a house in August last year, the first house we've ever owned, or I've ever owned too. And we've got somebody in a major press organization who wants to make a documentary from the book, and going to see Dave Matthews Band in Guilford in a couple weeks. I loved it. Like, life is good, and it's extremely hard, and I think it should be. You know, So there's good things all around us. I love my cats. I would love to just be able to just read fiction, and you know not think about the evil things that are happening, but I see this as a sort of a war. It's a spiritual war.
Mhm.
And I want to continue to expose what's under the rug, and educate people, hopefully help people to not have their child taken, or to not see what's happening in their homes or in their families, because it's not far away from any one of us.
On your website, I Love You Like One, I saw all your, um, what's it called? Where you put the books and the references. I saw all your references
Yeah.
of different stories that, were very similar. There was so many of them. There was so
Yeah.
many of them. And have you brought together any sense of community around this, or any sense of centralized supports and discussions around this topic in your pain and in this experience?
Yes, and it's also something that I wanna continue to get better at and continue to work with others to create space for this group. But yeah, we're my wife and I are both a part of a couple of Zoom groups for survivors and survivor supporters, and we go to conferences. We go to one in, well, it's Warrior Bride Ministries out of Georgia that we've gone to a few times. Survivorship.org has conferences, and International Human Trafficking and Social Justice Conference. I've spoken at all of these conferences as well, and through that, like, we've gained a network of friends and survivors and people who are, in their, maybe in their own town they're alone, but they're not alone, because there's a lot of us. There there are a lot of us, and there's a lot of people with just very similar stories, and that, you know or people who grew up in this and escaped somehow, and are just trying to help other survivors and help expose this and help make it mainstream, because it really should be mainstream. It shouldn't be, if you were to Google ritual abuse, it's going to tell you that it's fake,
Yeah.
and then it came up in the 80s and it was disproven and blah blah blah, and it's just, that's not true, but that's what most people in this world still think. And it's so, like, that's a problem. And there's a lot of kids who are going through the foster system, or you know being diagnosed with behavioral problems and all kinds of things, that when you don't know that it could be this, that's a problem, because it's happening to a lot more kids than we want to admit or want to see. And it doesn't need to be like, it's not. I don't think it's scary. It's not scary stuff. It's not stuff that, like, I'm fascinated with. Like, I absolutely hate evil. It's not, there's nothing wrong with understanding something that you hate. And when you understand it, then it doesn't have the power it had. And the light is stronger than any of this darkness, but you have to know what you're dealing with.
Mhm. Yeah, even just movies like The Sound of Freedom, or I mean, now that's child trafficking, which is completely a little bit different, but yet the same. So much of our
I lost you, Mel.
well, that's okay.
What Sound of Freedom you were talking about?
Yeah, so The Sound of Freedom, excuse me, when movies like that come out, it exposes a part of humanity that we may not wanna look at, or that we may not know about, but that are connected. They're intertwingled and intertwingled. I
Hmm.
don't even think that's a word, but it is now.
How it is, yeah.
But there's I personally think that things are being exposed systematically that are gonna change our absolute paradigm of what we know has transpired. So, tell me, do you think that your life has been preordained, pre-written?
Well, that's a tough one. I don't think it quite works like that. I think that I think I believe in a creator, so I think that we were all created with a purpose, but I think we have choice. So I think that, like, God, the omnipotent power who created us, knows what the whole story is, but that doesn't mean that it's helpful for me to look at it like that, because I still have to learn and do my best every step of the way. So I try not to think of it as like it's all preordained, because I find that that makes me a little lazier,
Mm.
or complacent. And so, like, yes, I do think that, the all-knowing God knows what's going to happen, but that doesn't really apply to me or what I'm doing, other than to kind of find like some solace and peace in that.
So you're saying it doesn't take away the accountability.
No, I don't think it takes away accountability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good perspective.
I think that, like, I think that my desire and my intention have to be on the right things, or that to the best of my ability, right, at any given moment. And that is, if my desire is good and to serve good, then that's what will happen, if that's my true desire. But even in that, like, we can fool ourselves, we deceive ourselves, we don't see everything. So we have to, like, keep assessing ourselves and the situation around us, and be real and honest with ourselves.
Well, I so much appreciate you sharing your story and the character of who I can feel you are and who you are standing for and wanting to help. It honestly, it gives me hope, Ian, because so many people would go through a situation like this and have a lot of anger and have a lot of and spiral, but the th- everything that I hear you saying is just gives me a lot of peace and a lot of hope for humanity.
I mean, it just comes down to love, Mel. Like, it started with me loving my daughter more than myself, more than anything, and then it just goes from there. If I love my daughter that much, then I also need to love you that much, right? Like, and because that's what makes it real. And it's just what's going to work for us to survive what we're dealing with, and what a lot more people are seeing, as you said, with Sound of Freedom and the Epstein files. But there's still a lot they're not seeing, and the real thing in all of this is love,
Mhm.
and doing the best that we can as human beings in our respective roles in each of our relationships, and taking that seriously. And yeah, I won't ever give up on my daughter, but that has redirected the entire course of my life.
Mhm.
And I do believe there's hope.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you a question earlier about faith and just how you how you hold on to it.
How I hold on to faith?
Mhm.
Well, that's so faith is an interesting topic. I used to think it was a stupid word for people that needed to believe in something to make them feel better. And basically, what it comes down to for me is I had my head rubbed in evil. Like, I was front and as close as I can be, as close as I can be, as far as space, but also how what matters to me, being involved in this, which is, it couldn't have been any clearer of a lesson: what evil is, what evil is doing, what evil wants to do, how it operates. And so from there, like, all of a sudden I did believe in good too, and I did believe in God too, because like I didn't prior to that. Like, I was a staunch humanist, agnostic, atheist. Nothing. You guys are talking to an imaginary friend in your head when you pray, type of thing. That's
Mhm.
what I believed until I saw the depths of evil, and then it's just like, oh, okay, that's what that means. That's what that I believe that the Bible says what's true. So this God in the Bible hates evil. Jesus loves the little children and all this. And yes, the Bible has been terribly distorted and taken and and I don't agree with most people that claim the Bible is true. But that's what happened for me was I saw evil, and then it's like I remembered scriptures from my childhood about, overcoming evil and, your prayers being answered, and there's a force stronger than you that you can rely on and that wants to set the captives free. And it just became, okay, that's what I need, right? That's what it came down to. If there was something else that I could turn to that would help me, I would have done it. But there isn't. It's a straight good and evil situation,
Hmm.
And so I've just said, all right, evil took my daughter. I need good. What is that? And I'm not taking anyone else's word for it. It's been my own journey because I don't think anyone else knows what they're doing for the most part, like or any of these institutional places that are,
Hmm.
you know, I don't think they know because their life is not on the line like mine was and is.
Yeah.
I think you really need to desire it to be able to see it. But that's what it comes down to for me is just, of course, good wins. Of course, there's a purpose. Of course, good wins. Otherwise, there really would be no reason to be here to be doing any of this. Like nihilism would be the truth, and it's not. Because I know my daughter, I know it's not.
I love that. Of course, good wins.
Yeah,
So, Ian, tell us a little bit about how people can find you, how they can. There's going to be people listening to this that are going to want to reach out to you. Tell us how they can find you. We're going to have all the links in the show notes, but just give us in your words some of the best spots they could find you, and anything that you're doing that you want to bring attention to, or any links or websites or anything like that that you want people to bring awareness to.
yeah. So the easiest way to get all of the links in one place is from my website, which is I love you like one.com. And
Okay.
and from there you have, I think the YouTube channel is probably the place with the most going on. I think there's 63 videos currently on the channel, and I'm trying to make videos and just keep that channel engaged and learn how to make better videos and all that too. And I have Facebook, Instagram, X. I have all the accounts, but they're all through that website, I love you like one.com, which is also where the book is. There's a link to the book there. There's a link to a lot of other materials, a lot of other books and stories, testimonies of similar stories. And also, if somebody wants the book but can't afford it or doesn't want to buy it, I will send you the PDF for free if you send me an email, and that link is also through the website. So I want people to have the book regardless of their situation or whatever. So if you want the book and don't want to buy it, I'll send it to you. And I think, yeah, pretty much everything we're trying to keep it on the website. And yeah, I make Facebook posts and stuff like that, but most of what we're doing now is going to be on the YouTube channel. And then I don't know, I don't have a date for the documentary yet, but I'm excited about that. I think that will help people to see this in another way, that's especially for people that don't want to read a 600-page book.
I wanna read a 100-page book, and I'll be buying one of those, and I would implore everybody else to go and buy one as well. What you just said there, how you're willing to send the book for free, gave me goosebumps because it just says everything right there about your character and the mission behind this. So, thank you for everything that you're doing, Ian. Is
Thank
there
you, Mel.
anything else that you would like to share with people before we wrap this up?
I I think that I would just ask your audience to search within themselves a little bit and to be uncomfortable for a moment, and like really try to grasp the concept that your children are my children and vice versa. And that's, I'm not trying to do that to get you to fight for my child. That of course that's part of my goal, but I really also believe that it's in your best interest for your children and your brothers and sisters' children and all of those other people that I may never meet, but I'm telling you, this is not as far away from your family as you think it is. And to me, the scary thing is to continue not knowing that. Educating yourself is not scary. And even though it seems to be at first, because you don't want to think about these things, I get that, but you really need to. And I kind of implore you to sacrifice your own comfort for the benefit of your family and others around you. Because also everyone who I've come in contact with, or most of the people I've come in contact with in the police, in the courts, in therapy, they don't know what I'm talking about. So like we all need to know what to do, what's going on in our world with our children. And in Sound of Freedom, that focused on children outside of the borders of the United States, kind of children that are going to have more trouble identifying with. And I'm telling you that same movie could be made in any city in the United States. And that, I think that should cause action in our lives. I really do think so.
Yeah, I really hope so, Ian. Well, once again, thank you for everything that you're doing, for the parts of your story and pain that have made people examine something inside of themselves and their own life and their own situation, and maybe even just recognizing different situations that they weren't able to see before.
Hmm.
But thank you for everything that you've done and that you're doing and that you will do. And I appreciate this
Thank you, Mel.
conversation.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Now, if it moved anything inside of you, we would graciously ask that you share it with someone, that you like and subscribe on all the social media channels that you can find on activateandilluminate.com, that you check out our brand partners listed on there, and that you have a fantastic day.